Okay, so we'll start as usual with the recap. Uh, I should ask somebody else to do the recap next time. Um, so we talked about why Vedanta because it asks some questions which are giving answers to everything. Uh, we said how to study the scriptures, Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam, the ability to repeat what the scriptures are saying, asking all the doubts, questions, and then being able to realize the truth, right? Really get the feel for what it really means. Then we talked about human goals. We said the uh,
Sorry, sorry, Shri. Could
yeah,
you please, everyone, please go on mute because only Shri needs to be talking. We keep hearing noises.
okay. Okay, so we said the goals can be classified under four topics. One is the material goals, which is artha. Then we talked about the experiential or entertainment goals, which is kama, and then we talked about dharma, which is all the things that you do to gain positive karma, and then we talked about the ultimate goal being moksha, which means that you're going to be independent of all external dependencies. And the whole of Vedanta, most of Vedanta is about how do you attain that ultimate goal, which is moksha. Then we talked about the Vedic lifestyle framework. And then we said there are three paths to attaining Shreyas, which is moksha. And those are karma yoga, upasana yoga, and jnana yoga, right? These are the three things we talked about. And last week we said, okay, the whole is it okay? I mean, is it possible for us to reach moksha through any one of these, or multiple of these, or do we need to do all of these, right? And we framed it in the problem, solution, and method. Anybody remember what was the first problem? You have to unmute. Okay, so the first problem was ignorance. We said it's we are really ignorant of our own self. We don't know who our true self, and this ignorance can be removed by knowledge, and that's called jnana yoga. And in order for us to learn this knowledge, we need to have a very focused mind, and the focused mind comes through bringing focus through Upasana Yoga. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And then we talked about impure yoga, impure mind. How do I purify my mind? I purify my mind through Karma Yoga, right? And the technical terms for these is Ajnana and Jnana, Vikshapa and Egakrita, Chittamala and Chitta Suddhi, right? That's really what we talked about. And in terms of Karma Yoga, we said there are certain uh, tasks that you should do, you have to do, there is no choice. And these are called Nishkama karma, and these are not for any of your artha or kama goals, but it's for dharma and moksha goals. And that's what we want to do. That is proper karma. And proper yoga is the attitude of equanimity, which includes humility, acceptance, non-comparison, devotion. And how do we do that? Through Ishwararpanam and Prasada Buddhi. Ishwararpanam being doing everything for a higher being, whoever it is that you have in mind, and accepting whatever is the result of that as Prasada Buddhi, right? So that's Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga was proper action with proper attitude. And what that does is basically it expands your mind, it takes your focus from everything for me and mine, our close friends and relatives, but it goes beyond that, takes you through to humanity and other living beings and so on. So having said that, if we continue to practice that and do karma yoga, you will get to a stage where you can start focusing on disciplining yourself, right? And Karma Yoga to some extent disciplines yourself as well. So Upasana Yoga is all about disciplining and integrating your personality. Why do we need to discipline? We'll talk about. But Upasana Yoga is also, Adi Shankara likes to call it Upasana Yoga, but it is also sometimes referred to as Raja Yoga or Patanjali Yoga, right? You must have heard of that. Raja Yoga is a term that is used in some, but Adi Shankara, the Advaita school, calls it the Upasana Yoga. Ashtanga Yoga, it's basically Advaita Yoga. Advaita philosophy is is stitched together with various aspects of the Veda, and therefore it is. Adi Shankara openly says that a lot of Upasana Yoga is from Ashtanga Yoga by Patanjali. Patanjali is supposed to have created the Ashtanga. Ashtanga means 8 yoga, 8-part yoga, right? And the 8 parts are Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. So that's the 8 yogas. Ashtanga Yoga consists of these 8. The first one refers to ethics. How do you behave ethically? Observances, which is all the niyama, all the rituals that you have to do. Asanas, which is the physical postures. Pranayama, which is breathing, control of breathing, etc. Pratyahara, which is control of senses. Concentration, and dhyana is meditation. In fact, nididhyasanam is also a kind of dhyana, but it's dhyana on Vedanta, right? Dhyana on Vedas. Vedantic dhyana is called nididhyasana. And samadhi is absorption, right? So that's Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga. And Patanjali is a very interesting character. Maybe it is multiple characters, we don't know, but many of the things are attributed to Patanjali. Patanjali is yoga for the purification of the mind. He also is. There are two schools. One, they say actually he wrote the grammar, the Panini Sutra, which is the Sanskrit grammar, which is for the purification of speech. Some say he took Panini's grammar and he wrote the treatise on it and explanations of it. And he's also supposed to have written the Ayurveda for the purification of the physical body as Charaka, right? So that's why you have in India now you have all these Patanjali branded stuff that you get, which is all Ayurvedic things, right? So he's in some cases he's portrayed as a rebirth of Vishnu's snake, on the snake on which he sleeps, and he is a reincarnation. Patanjali is supposed to be a reincarnation of this, and there are lots of stories around this. So someone, when we first started, when we asked about questions, someone was interested in associating some of the stories that we have heard to this. And if you look at, an example of Karma Yoga, like the equanimity of whatever you get, you accept as prasadam. Rama is a very good example of that. When Dashratha said that, hey, you're going to be the king, he didn't jump with joy. He didn't, celebrate. He said, okay, fine, I'll take the crown. And then next moment when he said, no, you're not getting the crown, you have to go to the forest, he didn't react negatively. He just took it and he went, right? So that's kind of an example of what the kind of attitude you're supposed to have. So similarly, in the Patanjali's case, there is very interesting stories, especially the grammar story where he is supposed to have taught the Sanskrit grammar to thousands of students. So, but one thing he used to do was every time before he starts the class, he used to draw the curtains and told the students, none of you are supposed to lift up the curtain and look behind it till the class is over. And one of the curious students apparently lifted the curtain a little bit and looked inside, and he saw the whole universe. And the whole universe was on the stage along with the snake, and sparks were coming out of it. and one of these sparks came out through that gap in the curtain and burned, all the students who were sitting in front of him. So after the class, when Patanjali opened the curtain and came out, and he found all his students were dead, and he was like totally hurt, and not because the students died, but because he said, "What will happen to all my grammar teaching?" Right? So he was apparently very shocked. But at that time, a student came asking, "Can I enter the class?" So he must have, maybe taken a break or whatever it is. He escaped the burning, and he's supposed to have then taken this grammar and spread it for the rest of the world. So interesting story, but basically Upasana yoga, a lot of it is adopted from Patanjali's Ashtanga yoga. And the interesting thing is the three things that he talked about, which is mind, speech, and physical body, is some of the disciplines that we'll have to that we'll learn out of Upasana yoga. Now, we said Upasana yoga is disciplining and integrating your personality. Why do we need to discipline? Like, disciplining is like a dam. So we have a lot of energies, we have a lot of powers, and these powers, if not disciplined, will just dissipate. It's like the water flowing into the ocean. When you build a dam, you're able to save that water and use it for irrigation and other useful purposes. It's somewhat like that. You can use it to generate electricity very purposefully. You can use that water, right? So it's the discipline is supposed to help us do that. So what are the powers that we have? There are three powers that are described. One is called Ichha Shakti, which is the power of desire. When we want something, we really work towards it. The desire drives us, right? And if we have the desire for the right things, then we are able to channel our energies in the right way. So that's the power of desire that we have. Then Kriya Shakti, we have the power to do something about it. If we desire something, we are able to do something, and that is again a strength that we have. And then the power of knowing, Jnana Shakti. So these are the three powers that we have, and if we really direct them in the right way, then we will be able to achieve a lot of things. And we saw on the first day we talked about Adi Shankara. He lived hardly 32 years, and he was born in Kerala, in Kaladi. From there, he crisscrossed the whole of India. Again, an interesting observation. A lot of people say, "Oh, India was not India. Only British made it India." But if you look at Adi Shankara, he established four matas all over in all corners of India, and the corners of India are still the same corners of India, right? But he walked all over India. He wrote so many treatises and explanations for Bhagavad Gita and so many Vedantas. He wrote Bhashyams on about 10 Upanishads. He wrote so many hymns in devotion. Many of it you may have heard. The most famous being Bhajagovindam, right? He did so many things in that short time frame of 32 years. Similarly, if you take Vivekananda, again, he was around the same age when he died, but the amount of things he did, establishing so many Ramakrishna missions and going abroad, talking about the religion, all of this is possible because they were able to discipline themselves and direct their energies in the right way, or in the way they chose to direct, right? So that's the most important thing. A lot of us also want to do certain things, but we end up, dissipating our energies in a different way. So what are the disciplines that we have to learn? We have to learn about physical discipline, verbal discipline, sensory discipline, and mental discipline, right? These are the four things that we're going to talk about today. The first discipline, which is physical discipline, is very obvious. Everybody talks about it. I think uh, compared to our parents' generation, we are a lot more educated on this, paying attention to our physical body. How do you keep yourself fit? Both from eating as well as from a physical activity perspective. Health is important. We all know that. I mean, if you're not healthy, we cannot do things. Not only can we do things, we can't even enjoy the benefits of that, right? Benefits of that achievement. Both require health. And health is not, I mean, you've got to be blessed with good health and you've got to maintain that good health. And like all of us know, health is something we do not notice until we lose it, right? We have seen that. I mean, you get hurt in a, you cut yourself with a knife or something in your finger, and then every time you kind of button your shirt, it pains, and that's when you realize how much this fingertip has been helping you, right? Similarly, you get a knee problem, suddenly you realize, I'm not able to do that, I'm not able to do this, or a back sprain, and suddenly you realize I've been doing so many things with this back, right? Till then you don't even notice it. So that's something that we need to be very cautious about, and I don't have to tell all of you, you all know that. But there's an interesting observation somebody made, that if you don't devote time to actually exercise and to being physically fit, sometime you'll be forced to spend time in the hospital or being sick or whatever it is, right? So that time that you have to invest into health is important. We only notice it when we don't have it. At the same time, there is a lot of balance and moderation that we need. Both in eating as well as in physical activity. There is a moderation of how much you consume. At the same time, don't be so physically obsessed that your focus becomes your body, rather than just keeping it fit for you to do other stuff, right? So that's the important quality that we need to bring about. So it talks about dietary and physical exercise in proper quantity and quality. Um, there's a lot of literature today for us to learn about this, so I'm not going to spend too much time on physical discipline. Next one is the verbal discipline. And again, we saw when we talked about what's the difference between humans and animals, we said one of the important differences is language and the fact that we can speak and we can communicate with each other through speech. So verbal discipline becomes extremely important, um, paying attention to what we speak. It's called Vak Tapas, and that is something that is prescribed in Upasana yoga on what you should and what you shouldn't do. First of all, it says avoid arguments. Avoiding arguments saves a lot of time and energy. Nowadays it's not just by speech. You can see in Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, a lot of arguments going on. Most of the time, the person is already made up his mind, he or she is not going to change his mind. But we still enjoy that verbal exchange, wanting to prove ourselves right. So first thing is, don't waste your time on arguing things, right? Again, I did refer to it sometime in one of this earlier, either in the Karma Yoga or the beginning part, where I said there is a definition of arguments, and there is a argument for the sake of gaining knowledge. That's fine. There are arguments for the sake of arguments, which is what you should avoid, right? The next is avoid gossip. Uh, Again, this is something you have heard in many of the TED Talks and whatever. Good thing to avoid. Avoid worthless talk. Worthless talk meaning if the speaker is not, or the listener is not interested or not useful to either of them, don't indulge in it. Do not dwell on the past, but and as we get older, I think we have to remind ourselves of a lot of this, because I've experienced that. When we grow older, we keep talking about older and older stuff, uh, and we keep repeating those stories again and again. So don't dwell on the past, but at the same time, use the past experience to talk about what the future possibilities are going to be. So that is a very key advice, right? So if I have to avoid arguments, avoid gossip, avoid worthless talk, is there anything I should speak? Right? A lot of us, if you analyze what we spoke in the whole day, a lot of it can be classified under the above three, right? So what do I speak? So coming to the positive aspects of it, your speech should be non-hurtful. Non-hurtful is like a non-violence in speech. Uh, I'm not going to go into what hurts, what doesn't, but there are lots of things that you know that if somebody tells you, you're going to be hurt. So don't say that to others, right? Um, saying hurtful things sometimes is essential, and when you have, sometimes you just cannot, like for example, if somebody is not doing the right things and you have to tell them, one of the hurtful things is when somebody tells you that you are wrong, right? It's really hurtful, even though you may be wrong. And sometimes you do have to tell that. And that the recommendation there is, it's like a knife, use it like a surgeon and not like a butcher, right? So use it very, very, uh, after giving anesthesia, tell them all the positive things, and then you tell them that in this instance you are wrong because of this, and then go, give them space. That's non-hurtful speech, right? The second aspect is be polite. Polite in all kinds, right? Keep your voice soft, right? A lot of us, we talk so loudly that the eighth house from here can hear it. You don't need to, right? We can talk politely. We can use soft language, soft voice. Everything can be soft. uh, it's somebody pointed out, when you tell somebody I love you, you always whisper, and when you get angry, you shout, right? So the whole uh, the tone of your voice is dictated by the feelings that you have, which shows that when you are in love, you are so close to each other that whispering is good enough. And when you start fighting, you go further and further away from each other, that you really feel like shouting at each other, right? So that's really an important aspect of speech, which is being polite. Be truthful. uh, White lies are also not acceptable, but you know that's something that very difficult to follow. Easy to say, very difficult to follow. And think about useful, the opposite of not worthless talk. uh, Before you speak, just make sure that it is useful for the listener or useful for you, right? So that is verbal discipline. um, I mean, these are all common sense stuff, but it's good to remind ourselves once in a while on the necessary conditions for these. Then comes sensory discipline. Sensory discipline is senses are the windows or the doors to the world, right? Everything that we learn or everything that we experience is through the five senses that we have. So if you let anything come into yourself, it's like garbage in, garbage out. Any bad things that come becomes detrimental to you. And so if I don't have control, then try, the world can just pollute you. Anything that you'll see that it's very easy to let bad things come into you. It's extremely difficult for good things to come into you. Uh, that's the real reality of life. Um, Avoidance of unhealthy atmosphere is called sensory discipline, right? Now, we talked a little bit about raga dvesha last time, so I wanted to touch upon how do we avoid these, right? We avoid these through alertness and discrimination. I think when we were doing the meditation session, Tripti was talking about how if you are aware, you will never have an accident if you're driving, right? It's similar to that. If you're aware of your actions, if you're aware of your emotions, if you're aware of your thoughts, then, and if you're alert, you will not, you will be able to have the sensory discipline. So, in fact, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, in verse 33, I think, Krishna talks about this, saying that, so how do you act? You just act, right? And some of us act in different ways. He says in the subconscious mind there is your sanskara or prakriti, which is your vasanas. We talked about the vasanas. We'll talk about it when we talk in the jnana yoga session. But basically, these are innate tendencies that we are born with. This is sanskara or prakriti that we have, which drives our raga dvesha. It drives our desires and likes and dislikes, raga and dvesha, right? So if you just sit and think about how thoughts come into our mind, thoughts randomly come into our mind. It comes from this vasanas, this subconscious. It constantly bubbles up thoughts, and we pursue certain thoughts, we ignore certain thoughts. But most often this raga dvesha drives it into conscious mind, and we act on it, right? Many times when somebody says something to you, you like it or you hate it, and you blurt out something. And when you blurt out something and then you regret it, saying, why did I blurt that out? I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have hurt that person. So so how do you stop that? If raga dvesha, Arjuna is asking, he's asking, if raga dvesha is driving me to to act on it, then does that mean I have no self control? I cannot do anything? And then in the next verse, Krishna talks about the fact that there is some in between space when you can stop it, right? When you can stop these actions. How do you stop these actions? That's where the awareness comes into picture, and that requires a lot of mental discipline, and we'll come to that in the next section. So if you think about it, they say when you get angry, count till 10, right? That's again a way of saying, don't react, observe, think about what's going on, and be alert towards the changes that are happening to you, and thereby you are able to catch it and either suppress it or express it, right? So that is or work it out. In fact, you shouldn't even suppress it. The moment you get a bad thought, you're kind of able to rationalize why that's a bad thing and you shouldn't do. That's again the discrimination part, the ability for you to discriminate between good and bad, right? So that is sensory discipline, and that's tied a lot to the mental discipline, which we'll talk about. Now, what is mental discipline? The reason I put the Mahout and the elephant, again, going back to the elephant and Mahout analogy, uh, I don't know how many of you have seen the Mahout riding an elephant. When he wants to go somewhere and he wants the elephant to turn left, then he kicks the behind the ear of the elephant, and then it turns to the other side, right? So if the elephant refuses to turn, the Mahout can't do anything. He's powerless. He's puny compared to the elephant. There's no way for him to force the elephant to turn that side, right? So he has to train the elephant over and over again to start listening to these signals that he's giving it. And once the elephant is trained, then he's able to drive it to anywhere he wants, right? If he wants to go from the temple to the lake, he knows he can sit on it, he knows he can direct it, he knows he can control it. Now, we can compare our intellect to the Mahout and the elephant to our mind and body, right? Um, that's, we were talking, Nidhi and I were talking about the knowing to doing gap, or saying to actually doing, acting gap. Those are gaps because our intellect knows something, but our mind refuses to follow that, right? We know, how many of us have set alarm at a certain time, woken up and switched it off? Every one of us has done it sometime or the other. How many of us have determined that I'm going to start doing certain things from tomorrow, and tomorrow comes and I don't, right? I want to get up every morning at 5 o'clock and do meditation for 5 minutes. Doesn't work. Morning comes and I pull my blanket over me and sleep some more. And then I realized I don't have time. First thing to cut is the meditation. Let me go to work, right? At work, I say I want to finish this by today, and I don't. Because there is a difference between intellect and mind. Mind is like your body, right? It's like your body. If you read a lot about exercise, doesn't mean your body will become fit. Right? You have to actually exercise, and that's exactly the way for mind. If you want to train your mind, you have to meditate. You need to practice. You have to bring your mind to listen to your intellect. We will talk about the body, mind, intellect in a later session, but that's the three things that we are made of: the body, mind, and intellect. And when we read a book and we get a knowledge, we understand it. We say, "Great, this sounds very good. I should do it." Like the book the synopsis that I had sent, which is Deep Work, which talks about many things. Don't keep looking at your email, don't keep looking at your phone, keep it aside, do this, do that. It all sounds great to your mind, to your intellect. Say this is the way to do. But next thing you know, after 3 days of practicing this, your mind kind of rationalizes things and you come back to normal. So if you keep the Mahout and elephant analogy in your mind, you realize how much you need to train the mind in order for you to be able to control your mind. So it is considered one of the most important disciplines out of the four disciplines that we talked about. Now, if you Google, I tried types of meditation. It starts with 5 types, 4 types, 10 types, 21 types, 32 types. There are many different ways of meditating, and yeah, and most of the meditation, the original uh, dhyana comes from Panini's work, Patanjali's work. Sorry, the Patanjali Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga. But lot of other people have experimented and found different ways of meditating, different styles of meditating. Buddhism has its own styles of meditation, uh, and Jainism has some meditation. I heard even the Sikhs have some Kundalini yoga type of meditation. So each of us have our own styles of meditation. But I try to classify based on some literature on these four types of meditation. One is relaxation, getting rid of stress, being able to keep your all the buzzing of the day's activities out of the mind and helping it to relax. The second type is the concentration, kind of what we did last week when we focused on the breath and bring the attention back to one point. There's other two, which is one is expansion or accommodation, which is giving you a perspective, being expanding your perspective, thinking about the ocean or thinking about the sky. Um, when I was studying in Pilani, the desert sky, you look at it and you can see the Milky Way and you can see the satellites. It just gives you a totally different perspective. You realize, there are like billions of stars out there and billions of galaxies, and you're one small, rock going around one star in the Milky Way. And that's an expansion perspective that you get, right? Which really gives you a different sense for yourself. And then the last one is refinement, which is cultivation of ethical values, thinking about good things. In fact, Eknath Ishwar meditation, he basically says, take a prayer that you understand, take that and you meditate on that. That's ethical, kind of cultivating good values that you have, right? So that is the types of meditation. So each of us have a type of meditation. That is relaxation meditation, developing ability to relax, either visualizing beautiful nature or just observing your thoughts, not focusing on it. You have concentration meditation, either by worship or recitation, repetition, breathing, different types of things that you want to do to focus and develop your ability to concentrate. Um, again, uh, this lot of this is going towards your mind. How do you get your mind to work or listen to what your intellect is saying, right? uh, of course. Okay, let's cover this and I'll come back to that. Then you have the expansion meditation. You're thinking it's ocean meditation, sky meditation, basically universal vision, widening your perspective, and then healthy traits, good values. uh, when we talk about you know, the body, mind, intellect, uh, then the question is, what is consciousness? And that's a lot of it we'll cover during Jnana Yoga. But there is a consciousness. If you look at modern science, consciousness is defined as the hard problem. What is consciousness is something that nobody's, you know, there's no clear definition, but we'll talk about that in Jnana Yoga. So here we are primarily focusing on training your mind, right? Getting your mind to focus, getting your mind to relax, getting your mind to expand. How do I do meditation? There are a few simple steps that we can focus on. I'll go through. This is actually by I think his name is I forget the name of the person who wrote this book, but he's written a book very simple. It's a Vivekananda's one of the disciples. He talks about 10 aspects, 10 things that you need in order for you to meditate. First one is be regular, right? It's important. I mean, his recommendation is 3 times a day or twice a day, at least once a day. So once a day, and again, the best time to do it is early in the morning. Get up, you're fresh, your last day is gone. In fact, when we are sleeping, when we are in deep sleep, right, we have the waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. When we are in deep sleep, we are totally not anybody, right? We don't, whatever you may be having the biggest worry in the world, but the moment you have deep sleep, you have no worries. You're not thinking about your work, you're not thinking about anything, you're just deep sleep. That is kind of the state that you want to go to. But you can start meditating, like, you know, without knowing much. You can mechanically start meditating, but you have to start. It's just like I said, physical exercise, right? uh, I can just start running today and I will be in better physical shape than if I read 20 books on physical training, right? That's the same way. If I start sitting and meditating, I will start getting into that groove. So first thing is to be regular, every morning if possible, every morning and evening even better. Uh, have a fixed time is the second tip that is given. Always have that time and try to make it during that time. It just gives you that force of habit. Again, it's part of training your mind. Have a fixed place. Again, all this helps you to kind of get into the groove. For, you know, many of us who play games, uh, you know, especially golf, for example, you have a routine. Before you hit the shot, you will do this, and this. Why? Because that just puts you in that frame of mind. um, Same thing when we work. If we have a place to work, when we go there, automatically your focus comes. You become a lot more ready to do your work. So similarly, if you have a fixed place that you always sit there, once you sit there, automatically your mind gets into the framework for you to meditate. So again, there is moderation in this, because we all travel. I mean, I know after COVID we are not, but so if you are too hung up on the place, then it becomes difficult for you to follow this. But it's always advisable to have a fixed place, fixed kind of dress. All that helps, because it just gets you into the framework. And that's a reason why we have, like, for if you're going to the temple, you don't wear shorts. You know, there's some things that help you to get into a frame of mind, uh, and that's one of them. The fourth aspect is develop good thoughts. Good thoughts Some people, when they start meditating, all the bad thoughts come, and they seem to say that, hey, I was okay, but once I started meditating, all these bad thoughts came into my mind. But they say it is like washing uh, you know a bottle which had ink before, right? When you start first wash, a lot of black fluid will come because all those dried up ink is getting dissolved in water and flowing. So it's like that. When you start focusing, suddenly the thoughts that are there already come into focus. So it's not like bad thoughts came, but it was already there, it just got focused. So if you start not focusing on it but letting it go, you will slowly get into getting good thoughts, and good thoughts help you to remain focused. Avoid bad associations. I mean, this is quite obvious. I don't want to go into that. The other aspect he talks about is asceticism. What does it mean? It doesn't mean you leave everything and go, but the idea is to kind of, if I like so much of it, can I do with slightly less of it? That is the first step to asceticism. So if you start doing that, you get into the framework of being able to control your senses. So that's one more aspect. Leave your roles outside. Like I said, when you're in deep sleep, you're not a dad, you're not a boss, you're not a husband, you're not a wife, you are nobody. Can you get into that? Can you leave, if this is the room I want to meditate, can I leave everything, all my roles outside? I'm not a dad, I'm not a kid, I'm not a child, I'm not a husband. I'm able to leave those roles outside and be able to sit without those. Develop a desire to meditate, desire to focus, desire to whatever that the motivation for that meditation is. Develop that, build a strong desire. Uh, Try to have serenity through the day. Again, like, I shout at people, I'm so busy, I'm always active. And then suddenly I think I can all cool down when I meditate. That doesn't happen. You have to try to be serene through the day. So it's a constant reminder of your connection to that, to God or to whatever that higher being that you can think of. So that is, and then the last one is keep good company, which is, you follow certain holy people, or people who talk good things, and that cultivates you to become better at this. Right. So this is kind of all the steps that help you to get into the framework for meditation. I think some of this Tripti also told us about. We started meditating, and we'll talk about that more as we practice meditation with her guidance. So I that's all I wanted to cover on Upasana Yoga. But I had one. I thought it will be interesting to talk about meditation and what does science talk about meditation, right? I thought I'll just leave you with this. This is kind of interesting. So I'm reading this book called Waking, Dreaming, Being by Evan Thompson. Evan Thompson is a cognitive scientist and a psychology professor. He's also a very staunch Buddhist. He works with the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama has been doing a lot of work with neuroscientists, bringing neuroscience and meditation together. So one of the and in his books he talks about a little bit about what science is showing with respect to meditation. So one of the things is in Abhidharma, which is one of the Buddhist sutras, it talks about the conscious stream of consciousness being divided into five things: contact, feeling, perception, intention, and attention. So when we look at it, there, like, we see many. So how do we see? For example, for us, it looks like it's a continuous. Our vision is continuous, but actually, if you study how we see, our eye moves, darts across the whole area, and we kind of build a mental model of what it is, and we focus on certain things. Our consciousness is similar, right? We get so many inputs, but we kind of uh, perceive and turn our intention towards something, and that becomes the focus of our attention. Um, then they also talk about instances. So he says there are 65 instances in the time it takes for a healthy man to snap a spindle. If you really look at that, it comes to around 15 milliseconds, right? But when scientists talk about awareness, when they show some picture or some focus of thing, and it takes us about 100 to 250 milliseconds to actually report awareness of that. So what is there a difference between this 15 milliseconds? So they started doing some research on it, and they figured out that there are people who are able to recognize things in 15 milliseconds. And this is something that they found, that when you meditate, you get better at it. There is something called attentional blink. This is an experiment that they did. So basically, they show you different objects, two objects, and they ask you to, I mean, they show different objects, but they ask you to observe for two events, right? And when they show these two events within 500 milliseconds of each other, most of us will miss the second object that is shown. But that's called the attentional blink. So because when you recognize the first object, your attention gets focused on it, that the second object is missed if it's shown within 500 milliseconds. But what they found when they took people who have done 3 months intensive Upasana meditation, this attentional blink reduces, which means they're able to catch the second object uh, even if it's shown within 500 milliseconds. Uh, so there are two, Vipassana has two types of meditation. One is called focused attention, which is basically focusing, bringing back your focus to certain things. And the second is open monitoring, which is kind of what Tripti was talking about, where you sit outside and you just observe what's going on. Don't focus on anything. It's like thought comes, thought goes, right? So if you're able to do that, you develop that ability to not hold on to things, and that's probably what is helping attentional link to reduce. So these are things that have been studied through EEGs and fMRIs and MRIs, really studying the brain. They have also studied the attention ability. For example, dichotic listening. For example, they give two different times, both the ears, and they vary it and try to spot or focus on one ear. And these things are, and similarly, binocular rivalry. If they show two different images to your eyes, you can test it out. If you actually roll out a paper and hold it like this, right, with your hand, you'll see a hole in your hand. And then slowly the hand will appear. Then slowly only the hole will be there. So it is because you're seeing two things, two different eyes, and your eye switches between the two objects. But if you're through meditation, they found that you are able to focus on one or shift your focus to the other at your choice. So there is real impact to the way the brain works as per meditation, as per science, right? When you do meditation. So this is just kind of an aside for us to think through and really believe in this. So let me quickly summarize. Upasana Yoga, disciplining and integrating your personality. Why do we discipline? Because we have a lot of power and we want to utilize this power in the right way. The three powers of Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Jnana Shakti. And we have four disciplines we talked about: physical discipline, health, verbal discipline, speech, sensory discipline, how to make sure that our senses are controlled and not goes after anything and everything that our mind drives us to. And then how do I really train my mind to be mentally disciplined? So that's what I wanted to touch upon today. So now we can have questions.
Another great session, very insightful.
Thank you. So this is common sense. We know a lot of this, so it's not very, it doesn't tax your mind a lot. I kind of did what am I going to cover in Jnana Yoga next few sessions, and I figured that I need at least 5 more sessions to bring it to a logical conclusion. Okay, So hope the enthusiasm remains, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, agree
Yeah,
with Rip.
sure.
Awesome. Awesome, Sri.
Yeah, yeah. Thank
Okay.
you. I'm not even sure why you want to stop after 5 sessions, Sri.
How to say that? To me, it looks
I-
like
You
that I
will
am
have received.
in the kindergarten, and it will take lot many more lessons to me, for me at least. So I probably keep bothering you.
Yeah.
If
I
No,
agree
I'm
with
okay to continue.
Rajni.
I
yeah.
said
I
5 sessions to bring it to some conclusion, but there's no conclusion. This we can continue our discussions if required.
Like one question. Hey, Sri, tell me, is this
You
the
had a
first time
question?
you're doing this? Or you've
Anybody
done
else?
this before?
Sorry, Nitin?
Is this the first time you're doing this, or you've done these kind of things before?
No, this is my first time.
Really?
This is outstanding.
Outstanding.
So much
Okay, definitely you are Guruji now.
Become
I'm
Guru.
learning a lot as a teacher. Also, you learn a lot because it looks like that this is how it should be.
Yeah. No, so I know the good thing is this exercise of having to explain it helps me to structure it, and really I'm relearning a lot of stuff. So it's very useful for me.
Yeah, Shri, the same thing. You just said it. The exercise of you explaining and us absorbing it as you put it together so beautifully in the lesson that it's really valuable
Thank you.
what you're doing. Yeah,
And
thank
with
you.
your permission, I would like to do one session with my teachers because I find that if I revise this, if I have to face the questions, probably I'll learn better. So I
Yeah,
was
absolutely.
mentally preparing myself that yes, this one portion I'm
Yeah.
sort of clear and I can do that.
Yeah, so you can
So
use the slides that
This
I've
is how movements start, right, Sri? So if we take your teachings and your class every day and start doing this to better ourselves with our friends, imagine the movement you could start.
Yeah, exactly.
Rajni,
Yes, yes.
yeah, if you're going to be doing this with your any other group, I'd love to just join because I feel like I need to hear it again a few times. And I told this to Shri. I said, I feel it's too fast. Like I'd like to linger a little more, not because I'm slow as an individual, but because I have zero idea. So I'd love to hear a little more, but I think he wants to do an overview and then come back from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying.
Yeah, even I'd request the same.
Exactly. Today when we were walking, yes, Vivek, you want to say?
Yeah,
that?
we were in the morning we were walking and we kind of revised the whole thing. Not this like last session, and realized that it's many things seem that we are hearing for the first time again. So because some things when we are listening the whole lecture, not necessarily like because mind keeps on moving here and there. So not necessarily everything is absorbed and can be repeated.
Yeah.
So like that Shravanam, Manan, and then the third one is
Yes.
Nitya Dhyanam. So because that's a reflection yet not coming, the complete absorption is not yet there. So that we can recite it again and we can explain it to somebody again. Because that's very important for us to, I think, because we kind of resolved that we need to listen to this multiple times.
Yeah.
You are
And
right.
probably, go through with somebody and explain to somebody one time at least. Then
Yeah.
we probably will have at least third level where we say, okay, something has kind of gone into
No,
absorption.
you are right. You're absolutely right, and that's what I do. I mean, I listen to this Guruji called Paramatmananda. He speaks on Bhagavad Gita. His Bhagavad Gita lectures is about 250 hours, and I've listened to that twice, but not enough. You have to keep listening. Then every time you listen, you learn something new.
So if I could recommend something for everyone, you just have to memorize what Shri is sending us. Just learn it like when we were kids. And even if you don't understand it, just learn it by heart. Just the words. Just say, koi Sanskrit hum school mein we would learn it up. Just learn it like that, because over time, then when we keep hearing it again and again, we'll start interpreting it and understanding it. So I've started doing that. I started with the first lecture last week, I've got to page 5. I'm just memorizing it, like literally rota. So I would really I think that's very useful to do.
And that was the method actually advocated, right?
Yeah,
That
it is.
one of the, Sri said, like, one first thing is to memorize.
Yeah.
So
the thing is, that's why every class I'm starting with the first lecture summary. So, it's kind of revision for all of us. So maybe next time one of you should do the first slide and talk about it, and then we can go to the next section.
Good idea.
Yeah,
I heard
teaching in
Rajni
front of your
volunteered.
teacher. Teaching in front of your teacher is really, really difficult. I tell you, it's a terrifying experience. Yesterday, the school is conducting Zoom classes, so the teachers are teaching to the classes, and I happen to take a virtual tour of some of the classes just to see how they are doing. And teachers lose their focus. They are not able to do what they are mature adults, been teaching for 10-15 years, and they just they knew that I am there. That only changes the whole. So in front of Shri, I don't think I will be able to, but yes, I will practice sometimes with some other group, and then when I have enough courage, I will definitely do something.
All of you can volunteer for next class.
Now Tripti has has been teaching, so she might.
No way. Not falling into that trap.
You volunteer, not volunteer somebody else.
Yes, thank you, Sri.
One more thought which came to my mind as you go through each slide.
Yeah.
I think I'm learning to respect our elders and our traditions more, because it doesn't happen for every point that you make, but for some of them, I make that connection with, this is what used to happen at home, or this is what my parents did. Or even yesterday, Yogesh was talking about asceticism. Sorry, I couldn't pronounce asceticism to Manu and Kunal. And the minute that came up, it's like making connections and understanding those better.
Yeah.
So that was just something I wanted to share with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Raja read this book earlier, the book that Vivek has shared, and he used to discuss a lot. And many times you feel that I don't have answers. So sometimes when you're discussing things with him, it leads to a lot of learning, because when these kids study something, they learn it very thoroughly, and they are not afraid of asking questions, even if to the parents. We probably were the generation when we just followed certain rituals, just followed, not asked many questions.
No, in
These
fact,
kids
a lot of
questions.
things we were never told the philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
But once you learn, you kind of say, oh, that's why we were doing this. Like, for example, when we do the Janayu, we are supposed to do Gayatri Japa in the morning, afternoon, and evening. And when you talk about meditation that you do 3 times, that's what it is. So you're mechanically doing it without thinking about it. But if you really follow it, it has its benefit of forcing you and training your mind and being able to do some stuff, right? So there are a lot of things that we do, like when we go into the temple, we get a feeling of serenity or peace. Even if you go to the church or whatever, it's because of that place and because of that energy that you see.
In fact, after listening to your first lecture, Raja has started going through this Bhagavad Gita again. So he says he's listening to Bhagavad Gita again. And he was asking me, why you have not sent me the second lecture yet? So I sent him again, so second one. So I think today you will ask for third. So I will do that. Send whenever you are ready. So just share.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sri.
Thank you, Sri.
So much.
Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you, Sri. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.